I love playing the game at the current moment. It's super fun, but my initial first impression was this it? And I can't help but justify those people that are criticizing the game, even though, as they have mentioned, it is still in beta. It has been years since they've announced it, and the fact that they literally left like almost an entire role practically untouched.
Hello and welcome everybody to a brand new Game House show. As you heard in our cold opening here, my name's Robert Haynes, and I'm joined along with Terry O. And we're really excited to be bringing you something brand new, something we've been wanting to do for a long time. And while we focus on sports and esports, part of esports is gaming, and so we wanted to bring a new show where we would talk not just about the esports side of gaming, but also the gaming side of gaming. Something that we find to be, I don't know, interesting and important. So, yeah, Terry, I'm super excited to be doing this, man.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. We've been talking about this for a while, and for today's topic, we'll be going over Overwatch 2 and the beta and our initial impressions of it. And we'll be changing topics every so often, but with Overwatch 2 being such a hot topic at the current moment, I think it's a really good time for us to discuss it. What did you think of the first impressions of Overwatch 2?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think it's super topical because we've been waiting for 3 years for this game to come out, and while it is in beta, absolutely, my my initial impressions have changed. I will say throughout kind of the whole thing, and the reason is like so we were given access. I got to be completely transparent with this. We were given access to the beta, and they asked us to remember to put that this is a beta, right? This is not the finished product, and I do think when looking at it through that lens, right, I think it brings a much different perspective. Now, the interesting part is we are a couple days away from the Overwatch League starting up, which they will be playing on this version of the game. And so I've been really trying to, I don't know, look at it through multiple different lenses and in different ways. And when I initially started playing, I genuinely was like, man, this is just kind of the same thing, right? Like, I really didn't feel any different
Yeah.
outside of like, the new character, right? But then as I've put in more hours, I think I've probably put in about 10 hours so far. Maybe a little bit more. And I think both of us have put in at least 10 hours, like before we're even stating this. I know it's been out for almost a week, but hey, we're busy people. I've enjoyed it more. I really like push. A lot of people don't like push mode, and I can see why. I mean, it can get a little bit snowbally to a certain degree, but like, um, I think there's ways to fix it to make that better. But my initial impression is like all of the changes that they have made have felt very well thought out and very intentional.
I think a big
Um,
part of getting used
yeah,
to push is just getting used to the maps because like those initial
yeah,
choke points aren't the most intuitive, especially with the one with the bridge.
mm-hmm,
You gotta like loop
yep,
around. Like some characters can jump on top, but then like a lot of
yeah,
characters actually gotta go the long way around, and having to deal with that the first time is very confusing. It's really difficult to understand how you're supposed to fight those objectives. But now that we've been playing it a good amount more, I think people are starting to understand which points are the points that you really do want to contest vs which points you just kind of let the push slide.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that the interesting part about it is it's, and by the way, for those of you who don't know, push is a new mode in Overwatch 2. It's taking the place of the two capture point mode. And the goal is to have a robot that you fight over push an objective as far along as possible or to the end of one half of the map. I think
Then
the initial fighting, Terry, especially at the beginning, over the robot, I think is what's so interesting to me. It's like everybody is like you either get teams that are just like send it and they just run through and they try to just blow everybody back, try to play that coin flip, right?
yeah,
Or everybody kind of just waits till they get their ult first, which is I
true.
think I think is a really interesting aspect of it. And with the with the new changes, right? Like with Sojourn, our first new hero in 2.5 years, something like that, 2 years almost to the day. Being added to the game, you know, it's clear that like these types of modes and stuff they had in mind for a character like her, where it's a lot of skirmishing, a lot of back and forth, and I think that that's something that Overwatch was Overwatch One original, whatever you want to call it, was kind of missing.
Yeah, I personally I enjoy the push maps, but at the beginning I really did dislike them. And I do
Hmm.
see why a lot of people do. Like, especially when you lose control at the point, you have to wait until it walks all the way back. And in such a fast paced game, waiting that amount of time when you're not necessarily dead and you're trying to push an advantage can feel pretty tilting. But at the same time, I
Hmm.
think what that allows the game to do is it allows both sides to have more breathing time, which in a game like Overwatch, which is incredibly fast paced, I think it was much needed. Because by giving both teams the necessary time to recuperate, it prevents it from being too snowbally, which is definitely a problem that the original Overwatch series, the games had. Like, if one side was winning, they would often just snowball and absolutely bully the other side, which obviously it's still an issue, but I don't think it feels nearly as bad as it used to in the 6v6 modes. What do you think about
Yeah.
the comeback mechanics and just in general? Like, do you feel yourself more tilted in Overwatch 2 vs 1? Like, how's your experience been with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, now I will say on push, I still think that the opportunity to snowball is very prevalent, but I do think the game overall, like you said, I think the problem was is that there were actually periods of too much time to breathe for at the end, right, of Overwatch 1, where it was like all you would do is just try to group. What I think you're saying is right here in this aspect of it. If it's like a real breath. It's a quick breath, but it's like, okay, I don't necessarily have to wait for my entire team to be up to fight, right? I can still take fights and have an impact individually, right? In this 5v5 mode, and I think that it's been interesting because I've been less frustrated as a tank and as a DPS, because as a DPS I just felt like I never felt like I was able to do enough damage in Overwatch 1 because there were just so many shields. And
Yeah.
I like shields, but it's like they've tuned them down to the point where they're there for intelligent use, not just to,
Just
create
like
a
stack.
wall. Yeah, yeah, and not just to create like some impenetrable wall. Like it's there to be a temporary wall, which is what I think shields in any video game should be. Now the wall is the character, right? Like I was playing a game um, right before you all jumped on the other day, and this Reinhardt just lived forever. It felt like, but he wasn't using his shield. It was just because he has so much armor and health. And I was like, okay, like I could see where Reinhardt is useful, especially if he has like a pocket mercy or something like that, right? And it felt like it feels like sometimes the game it gives you didn't give you enough autonomy, right? Where you could truly 1v9, right?
Yeah.
Which we can use that now instead of 1v11, which doesn't sound as good.
True.
And so like, specifically with the changes to like Orisa and Doomfist. Well, I think Doomfist could actually do a little more damage, honestly. Both of them, and actually Orisa could do a little less damage. They both have the ability, and those
True.
are two, yeah, those are two reworked, characters, right? Like they both offer, I think, the ability for you to feel relevant. You're not just a shield bot sitting there soaking up damage.
Okay,
You can
on
actually go and do stuff.
topic of that, let's break down Arisa's rework specifically because that has been an
Yeah.
incredibly hot topic in Overwatch 2 conversations.
Hmm. Hmm.
I personally think she's very strong and potentially bordering on overpowered. But there are people out there that do think she is rather garbage. So what is your take on that?
I think those people just don't understand how to play her. I mean, I almost top damage with her almost every time, and if you get a pocket mercy, um, you saw when we were playing, right? I mean,
Oh, yes,
I,
100%.
I mean, I was dropping like 10k damage in a game. I mean, it was nuts. And it was just because either yourself, or Lauren would be there, with Mercy or just as healers in general, and you can truly feel like a front line, like an impactful front line, right? And so I I love her. I think she's great. I think her damage on her auto attacks are a little high.
They're
And her
way too high.
spear, yeah, and her. I mean, it feels like you're just getting hit with boulders basically every time. But like, I think her spear could be tuned down a little bit in terms of damage too. But I think the rest of her kit is fantastic. I really do. I mean, she creates the with her with like her
With her
shielding
like
ability, right?
barrier.
It eats, yeah, like it eats, different things, but it's not long enough to be a problem, right? It's not like
Yeah,
everybody's like, oh, it's just like Diva, and it's like, no, no, it's really not. Like, what it is sure it can eat certain things like Diva or like Sigma, but it's not as long. It speeds her up. Like it's more, if you use it correctly, it's more of a mode to push people away, right? Or a
facts.
mode to get yourself in to use your ultimate, which is by far, I think that might like. And again, everybody's gonna be like, "Oh, it's like a Zarya ultimate." Like, no, it's not, because Zarya ultimate, you can kind of just like do a fadeaway, right? You can just like pop it in there and say Kobe, right? And then you got people in the middle and you're firing into it. With Orisa, right? Like, if you don't use it correctly, you're just dead, and you didn't do anything. All you do is, yeah, you pull people in, but there's a component to it where it takes time to charge up, and you can do maximum damage. People can get out of it very easily. Um, and there's also the fact that she becomes the center point, and if people focus her down, she can die very quickly, if not being healed or if not at full health when doing it, or using her fortify ability, which I also think they did a great job with. I mean, they give her so many tools to engage, to help disengage. Like, she feels like a tank in League of Legends, where they have the ability to do multiple different things without necessarily being super strong. Her problem is just her damage is too strong. If they tone
Yeah,
that down maybe 2 to 5%, I think she would be one of the most complete characters in the game. And I was really questioning their decision to change her at all, to be honest with you. I mean, do you feel the same way?
yeah. I personally loved her in Overwatch One, but like now that I've had some hands-on experience with her in the two beta, I've absolutely been loving the experience. Like as you said, like her E doesn't last for that long, so using it properly and learning how to push with it becomes really pinnacle. But because it doesn't last that long, it's easy to just wait it out if you're playing against her. Like if you see her spinning her, what was it, like a staff or something? It's easy to just
Yeah.
wait it out and like either go around it or just avoid her completely. And I think when I first started playing Orisa, because I didn't understand how her ult worked, I used to think it was weak. But now that I realize like, it actually draws the people in, I think when properly used, the learning curve is rather high for the ultimate, but it's definitely very strong. I was very wrong about. I mentioned this previously to other people that I thought her ultimate was her weakest trait, which is definitely not right. It's very strong. I've seen
Hmm.
people carry with it. And the second rework that I want to talk about is for Doomfist because he did completely change which category he's in. He used to be like an attacker role, but now that he's in defender, I personally think he is a little bit overwhelmingly strong. Like if you have the proper support and you're properly grouped, I think his what's that one move, the one where he charges up and pushes into the wall, like his one like the VIQ.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So his punch that he had back in the day, it's the same thing. It's just that it does less damage, but it knocks people farther, basically.
I think his super
It's his
armor
right
is
click.
very useful, especially because Doomfist loves to literally just charge into everyone, and I've I started picking him up when I started seeing other people play him, and I realized they just weren't dying. Like Doomfist gains extra armor, his damage is
Hmm.
insane, and his mobility really does help him carry out throughout the fights. And I think, especially with the two healer meta, having the tank that survives for extraordinarily long time is incredibly important. And I've also tried I've tried Winston and like they added his long range capability, but I personally suck at aiming, so I don't really use it that often. When I play Winston, I really just want to play him for the Unga Boonga, just eight plays, not really like
Yeah.
I'm not trying to aim.
Yeah, well, I think the point of it was, and I was testing him out too. The only one I suck with Wrecking Ball. I can't, but I can play the rest of them pretty well. And I will say this, because I was wanting to test out the different tanks the other day as well, because I'd just been basically focused on the two quote unquote new tanks.
Yeah.
Um, I really like the addition, especially when there are people coming into choke points, right? And it gives him the ability to not only be useful when you're in the middle of a fight, right? Because sometimes it felt like with Winston, you could literally only use him if you were going like full dive comp, right?
Yeah.
Um, this, I think his new right click, his longer ranged ability, it gives him an ability to be um, how would I put this? It gives him an ability to still give some damage, still be somewhat of a threat. Like, if you fully charge that thing, I think it can two shot squish your characters if it like I think one of them's a head if one of them is a headshot.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like a good thing to lead off with. And like, I mean, if they're all running down a corridor, right? And they've got like a hog or something. It at least gives you the opportunity to feel like you are able to put some damage on with the rest of your team until you feel like you're in a good spot to be able to jump on in. And I think it was something that he was sorely lacking, to be honest with you, because again, in Overwatch One and over regular Overwatch, like especially when you're not good at the game, you're just jumping in and dying.
True.
You go in and you're like, all right, cool, I got my bubble down, and I'm starting to pour out some damage, but like, oh, I'm just dead now, right? My team's nowhere to be found. I think this gives him that opportunity, especially at lower levels, to do a little something extra. And I imagine we'll see him in the Overwatch League at least a little bit, thanks to this ability. I mean, you'll see some tanks who can pop some heads, and I think you'll be surprised. But yeah, I mean, tank reworks overall have felt really good, and I initially was like, it's pretty much just Orisa and Doomfist, but that was just because that's all I was playing. The more I played them, like Sigma still feels really good on push maps. I mean, really, really good. Um, just due to his shield being able to move wherever you needed to. Diva actually felt a little underwhelming to me. I had heard she
I
was really
agree with that.
strong, but yeah, I felt like her. I don't feel like she does enough damage right now, and I felt and I know people are like, oh well, her shield or whatever,
The shield
did
cooldown's too long though. It's not enough to like protect the
yeah
entire team often enough.
yeah exactly. And like the point of the tanks right now is to be more protecty. And I think it depends on the heroes that you have, but I think she can be run. Um, Reinhardt, I felt like the double fire strike was pretty solid, gave him a little bit more damage. I wish his shield was a little bit stronger, but
Yeah,
the rest of it's
1200 is a
fine.
little lackluster.
Yeah,
I
it's a
feel
little
more
low. It's a
useful
little low from the
as Brig.
2000. Yeah. And especially as somebody who mained Ryan for a long time, like, yeah, I mean, the difference in terms of the amount of time that you can take, and you really have to be very intentional about when you use it, because otherwise people are just going to sit there like I was playing a Sojourn, and since I can charge up my right click, the railgun by shooting shields, all I would do is I would just find an angle wherever the Reinhardt was, and I would just shoot the edge of the shield when he was trying to like hide behind a corner or something. I'd be able to take down the shield and get my charge up. So yeah, I mean, so the game, I guess getting back to this, because we still want to keep these relatively short. We want to try to keep them about 30 minutes long.
Yeah,
Um, getting back to the game overall, like, because I think the nuances could be talked about for forever, right?
yeah. Like
I,
overarching
I
themes.
genuinely like where it is at. I don't know about you, but I feel
s-
like, and we'll talk about this here in I think a second. I think it'll be important for us to give our overall initial impressions and in comparison to what maybe our expectations were. But I feel like the reworks of all the heroes and everything, they feel pretty good. Like the only hero that I feel like is insanely overpowered right now is Soldier. That's the only one. Everything else feels pretty good.
For me, like I'm gonna just go over this real briefly. I could talk extensively about it, but the support role needs some changes. Either a new hero, more reworks, or something. I love playing Brig because of the natural healing that they gave the support role in general, but being a support main and like trying out Mercy and playing Lucio all felt just a little underwhelming. And I
Hmm.
personally I love playing the game at the current moment. It's super fun, but my initial first impression was this it? And I can't help but justify those people that are criticizing the game, even though, as they have mentioned, it is still in beta. It has been years since they've announced it, and the fact that they literally left like almost an entire role practically untouched, like compared to how much they changed the defender role, the attacker role, supports have been not tampered with enough, and I don't think I'm out of line saying that they need to do more for it. And I'm hoping that during the beta, they understand that they need to add more and change more for the support role. And the reason why they haven't changed it is because they want to make sure that things are going okay before adding in more drastic changes, because the supports do play a very heavy role in Overwatch 2 because there are less amount of players, and having two supports really does make it so people survive a lot longer. So I think they want to test the waters out, hence the word Overwatch 2 beta. But at the same time, I still understand why people are criticizing the beta and saying not enough has been changed, because matter of fact is, not for how long do people have waited, not enough has changed. But I don't want to say that Overwatch 2 won't be worth it at the bottom line, because I think bigger changes are coming along the way, especially with the PvE not even being seen yet. There's going to be huge differences that I'm sure Blizzard will follow through, but the question is, will this be worth the wait? Will this be worth the wait that all of Overwatch 1 fans have been waiting literal years? And after so much of the community died off, will this be enough to keep the game alive and bring it back to life?
Well, and I think that there's some nuances there. So I guess since we're jumping into this like the expectations compared to the reality of it, right? Um, here as somebody who's put a lot of time into it, who's followed the scene since extensively since day one. Um, I'm not the best player. Like I'm plat at best, really. So I'm not gonna come out here and be like, oh yeah, like I understand all the changes. I know exactly what they're thinking and all that stuff. Like here's how it would go for me. Um, yeah, we've been waiting for a long time. They probably announced it too early. Their biggest problem is that their timing is terrible.
Facts.
That's my issue with them, right? Because when I look at it, right, and so I think about this like, yeah, mentally I'm thinking, okay, so they announced this in what 2019. Pandemic hits, they get a nice excuse to take their time. And a good one, fair one, for sure. Um then, last year at BlizzCon Online, they announced, four new maps. They announced they show Sojourn. We already kind of knew about her. And they show like kind of the changes that they're making in terms of like Sombra's changes, which I thought were actually really healthy for her. The hero changes I think have been great. Where it is clear to me is that they've been working on, I think, the PvE mode, the story mode. I think has been the majority of their focus. And there was a little tidbit when they were talking about Sojourn specifically, that the reason that they didn't bring her out in Overwatch 1, which was my biggest criticism, I'm like, this character has clearly basically been ready since 2019. Why do we not have her in the game right now? Why do you not stem the bleeding by putting her in? And I mean, you've heard it. Everybody who will probably listen to this first podcast, who's mostly going to be TGH people, have heard me say, why not put her in the game? Right? Like, if she's ready and these maps are ready, like, just why not? Well, I I think I figured it out. The head of the hero design was like, hey, like, yeah, she's been ready, but she plays a pivotal role in the story of Overwatch, and we didn't want to put her in here without any context into what she was, and they didn't want to ruin the story of Overwatch 2. For me, they have been taking all this time because of the fact that they, you know, they want the story to be great. Like Jeff Kaplan back in the day, I don't know if you know this or not, like he described this as the Avengers, essentially, where Overwatch 1 was them kind of getting together, figuring some stuff out, kind of reestablishing, like basically introducing all the characters.
Hmm.
Now, as we saw to the cinematic for Overwatch 2, they're coming in together and they're back, right? And they got to go out and recruit. Like all of the comics and stuff that have been coming out lately are showing how um, Cassidy has been going out and recruiting all of these different heroes, and bringing them to Overwatch kind of just on the side. They're clearly, if you're following the lore and everything, they are building this thing up to be like an Avengers type moment, right? They still haven't really given us the big bad yet. And I think that they have the idea to have 50, 60, 70 heroes. They've just been dragging their feet because I think they wanted to get it perfect. I think if at BlizzCon Online, if they had just said, "Hey, we're gonna be launching the beta next year," I think that would have been enough. I think people would have been like, "Oh, okay, cool." The problem is they showed us all 4 new maps. We already knew about Sojourn. The reason that people are underwhelmed is that if they had not shown us these things ahead of time, people would have been hyped. Luckily, the betas are only supposed to be like 3 weeks at a time or something like that. Basically, like one a month. And they'll take, I think, like a small break, and then they'll put it back out again, or they're going to keep it live. I don't remember which one, but they will be adding new changes. They have already stated there will be new maps and new heroes added with each new beta, which in my mind means that in like 2 weeks we might be getting a new hero, probably a support, maybe a tank, right? And I think as long as they can make this a live game and the expectations of people, like, because people still love this game, they broke records. 1.5 million people were watching Overwatch and Overwatch 2 just to try to get drops so they could get into the game. They were breaking servers over the weekend because they had so many people trying to get into the game. The game is still fun. The heroes are still lovable and interesting. The characters are incredible. With everything that's been happening, and I think it would be remiss of us not to talk about, the problems that we don't have to go into details, but just discuss the fact that Blizzard Activision has had their issues, obviously. I think that when we look at this game, it's going to be better than we think. And for right now, yes, it's underwhelming, but it will get better. So, my initial thoughts are I'm giving this a B. If we're going to grade it, or if we're going to put it in a tier list, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I know I've been going on for a little bit, but those who don't know, these are all the different background things. I think we can give them a little bit of a break for now. What we need to do is see what are they going to do in May and June. If they don't do anything, if they don't change much, that's when we can start panicking. But for right now, I'm giving it a B. What about you, Terry?
I would give it like a B, maybe a B plus. Like in terms of communicating with their player base, I give them a failing grade. But in terms of gameplay itself and like my experience with the game and how much I personally and not objectively, very subjectively enjoy the game, I would give it a B plus.
Okay. I mean, and with all that extra knowledge, I mean, do you feel like this being a live game is going to help it?
I think we'll just have to wait and see because with everything like expectations being so high as they are, like there's no way that every individual's expectations will be met. So it's really just gonna depend on how well, like how they handle things. Like there's what will be leaked, what will be teased, what they will announce little by little. Like it depends on how Blizzard's media people alongside the developer team work hand to hand. I think that'll just be the bottom line because people will enjoy the game. It's just a matter of how they market it.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, especially if we don't get the story mode of Overwatch until this time next year, I think people are going to be a little disappointed. But yeah, I mean, with that, like that's our initial impressions of Overwatch 2. I think there's so many more things that we can go into, and I mean, I know it probably felt like we went into a lot of the nuances. I can tell you, Terry can tell you, that is not the case. There's just so many other things that we could go into, because there are just little changes that they made that I really do think has helped the game going forward. And I mean, we haven't even discussed truly what 5v5 means or feels like. And maybe we will do that on next week's episode. But, um, our goal with these shows is to just commentate. And we would love to know what you all think. Now, this will be going up on our YouTube channel. We'll be getting it up hopefully on a couple different, podcasting networks as well, Spotify, all that stuff. We'll have to get it all approved and everything. But so the first episode may not go up right away. But, we would love to know your thoughts on Overwatch 2 if you have played it, if you have watched it, even if you just don't care about it. Let us know in the comments section below. We would love to hear, more from anybody who's watching this show, how we can also improve it, and what topics you guys would like us to cover. So, with that, Terry, you got any closing remarks?
If you enjoyed the content, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more podcast videos. And be sure to leave some comments, like Robert said, just letting us know what you guys are thinking about the Overwatch 2 beta, whether or not you've had access or just seeing people play. Just let us know what you guys think.
Yeah, and do know that we're gonna be a little bit more organized the next time. We just really wanted to talk about Overwatch 2, so we didn't get this all formally planned out. We'll have segments and maybe even guests if you guys are lucky. Maybe we'll get an Overwatch 2 developer or something like that in on this show here in the future. Big brain stuff. But yeah, with that, I'm Robert. He's Terry, and from our house to yours. Thanks for watching and listening.